Okay, welcome in. We are trying out a new series here. We're just going live on YouTube. And the whole goal is to get your D3 recruiting, admissions, financial aid questions all answered live. So thanks for joining. If you are on, the way it's going to work is you have the chat on the side. If you're a subscriber to the channel, you can ask your questions in there. If not, go ahead and subscribe. It'll make you wait 5 minutes, and then you'll be able to ask your question. So feel free to get those going as you have them. That's the whole point of today. Otherwise, we'll be sharing a couple different items throughout, just to let you know kind of what is critical at the moment for D3 recruits as we approach the end of the summer. We're recording this towards the end of July 2026. So we'll go over a couple items, but then again, the priority and the goal here is to get your questions in the chat, and we can address those as they come up. So start asking away whenever you have them, and we will work on addressing a few other topics in the meantime. So to start out, while we wait for our first question, want to address an interesting recruiting phenomenon that we saw the other day. So the goal with every commit, with every recruit, is to get accepted to a school, to get onto a roster. Right now, this summer, the priority for most D3 coaches out there is the 2027 class. So they're scouting, they're looking at 2027s, and we've been working with a few across sports. And the phenomenon that we're seeing is high academics right now. So thinking, NESCAC, Centennial, UAA, those type of conferences are seeing a lot of their classes start to be filled up. So, whether it's just getting ready for early decision, they're committing to the application process, as a lot of social media posts will say. Those are already being done at the moment, and kind of we're seeing recruits get responses back that are, sorry, our class for 2027 is already done. So I think and we're going to have a newsletter post coming out on this in a couple days. But at the moment, the best thing you can do as a recruit is just be honest with coaches. We talked to one today who, was not really sure a couple weeks ago where they stood in their process. And our advice to them today was just be honest, be upfront about who your top choice is, and go ahead and let them know that right now. Because from a coach's standpoint, they want commitment to the school, and they want to know that if you're offered, you're going to go ED, you're going to commit, and you're going to be part of that program. So I think on that side of things, if you're 2027 right now, definitely make sure that you're being honest with coaches about your priorities, because letting them know can be that difference between the sorry, our class is filled up, and hey, here's a roster spot, here's your offer. So be mindful of that there with 2027s. On the flip side, something we saw that was very interesting this week was 2026 commitment and enrollment. So again, we are end of July here, but a team announced a 2026 commitment and enrollment, and this was 2 days ago. So how is this happening? Well, first of all, some schools have what's called rolling admissions. So from the time that admissions open, normally in November, December, around that range, they'll go all through until the school year starts. So we ended up DMing this coach and saying, hey, how's this working? And they said, we can actually accept 2026 commitments until a week after school starts. So on the one side, you have the 2027 situation, which we just talked about, where 2027 class is already done. And then the other side, you have this 2026 situation where kids are still able to get into school and get a roster spot as a 2026. It just goes to show that there are vast differences in terms of schools across the D3 level. There are over 400 institutions at the level. And it takes us back to the earlier point of just being honest and upfront. never assume that a coach is done recruiting you until they tell you that they are. And I think with the 2026 situation, that recruit probably just reached out and said, "Hey, coach, I'm in school, still allowed to play football," and it all worked out. Coach wants some players interested, and it's just a matter of letting them know. So again, right now where we are, we just reiterate to really be honest with coaches and share your priority list. To especially the top choice, let them know that they are the top choice, and that can be really helpful in your process. So I'll pause there. I see we have some viewers in already. Again, just a reminder on how this works. Make sure to ask your questions in the chat, and we will get those answered for you as soon as possible. And yeah, if anyone has questions, feel free to DM us on Twitter. We will be available there, or again, just ask it in the chat. So moving on to the next topic, we are going to cover an upcoming scholarship, and I'm going to pull it up here, that we reviewed in the most recent edition of our Scholarship Sunday newsletter. So I will share my screen. And okay, so not going to be able to share my screen at this moment. Oh, there we go. Okay, great. So here we go. This is the scholarship we want to share. And, the whole goal of what we do with this series, Scholarship Sunday, D3s can be expensive. I mean, they're somewhere in the range of $80,000 to $90,000 a year in tuition. And so what we're trying to do is just bring you resources and scholarships that help you pay less in your tuition. We're on number 47, which is pretty incredible. Almost been writing for a full year on this. But this one is one of the biggest of the year, and it is so, so, so important that you start early. This is called the Questbridge National College Match. And now Questbridge is an organization. They've been around a long time, and they partner with 55 schools. So if you are granted the Questbridge match scholarship, it is a total full ride. So we're talking tuition, housing, meals, cost of attendance, everything. And it's not actually provided by Questbridge. The agreement is the college partner provides it, and it lasts all 4 years. It is totally renewable. It is for you, not dependent on athletics or anything else that you're going to be doing there. It is just, do you go to that institution? And if so, you get it. So, in this post we write, it's the most important thing you do this summer if it is a fit. And that's because 32 D3 schools partner with them. So you have 32 different chances to maybe play your sport. But the best part here is it's free to apply, and just not a lot of athletes have heard about this. Everyone wants to try to go Division I because they get the benefit of athletic aid, but D3 schools have numerous pathways, just like Questbridge, to get an affordable tuition. And again, that's why we write this newsletter series and bring this to you. So let's go through this a little more. Do you qualify? Things to think about. Are you a high school senior graduating in 2026, planning to enroll later this fall? Later in fall 2026. Do you come from a low-income background, household income typically under 65K, earning primarily A's, challenging courses, And are you a US citizen or permanent resident? If those are things that apply to you, you can start researching the college partners. So the way this works is you rank up to 15 schools. So again, here are the Questbridge college partners. And again, we mentioned 32 D3 schools. So a couple here you're seeing already: Amherst, Bates, Bowdoin, Caltech, Case Western, Carleton, Claremont McKenna, Colby. All, go down the list. That is linked in this article right here. And it's important to think through the options because, again, you rank them in a choice list up to 15 schools, and then Questbridge matches you. And then based on what they decide, you get a match offer if you're accepted. So again, you are full 4-year ride. So full 4-year scholarship. And this is not a Common App essay. So it's going to take some real reflection, which is why we're saying starting in July is a huge advantage. You can probably get around 2 drafts before the October 1st deadline happens, and also give you time to get in touch with your high school counselor. So schools are on break right now. It's summer. Everyone's taking time off, which is great, but it might mean that it takes a little longer for your high school counselor to get back to you. So make sure to loop them in early. Gather financial documents, so things like tax returns, household income information. If you have FAFSA inputs already, that's something to get on board with. And then just go check out their website, learn a little more about what they're up to. Again, here it is, questbridge.org. And highly, highly, highly recommend that for anyone looking at D3 schools. So feel free to check that one out. Yeah. Again, just going to pause here for 2 seconds as we level set and remind people in the room, everyone watching, the goal tonight is to get your questions answered. So I can sit here and talk and share a couple of things that we've been up to and things that I think are relevant for recruits in this moment. But if you have a question, drop it in the chat and we will get that answered. We already had one from Marcelo before the program even launched here, and that was great. We were able to get that answered. But again, if you have a question, go ahead and drop that in the chat, and we will get back to you on it. So let's stop sharing here for a second. We will give it a minute to let people get their questions in. And if there are no questions, we will move on to kind of the next couple topics. All right. We'll move on then. Keep asking as you get in here. I know some people, I just saw some new subscribers get added, so it might take you a couple minutes to be able to ask a question. I think we have it set for 5. But go ahead and ask that once it is available. That is the whole goal of tonight. So, yep. I will move on to the next topic, which is, let's think about social media and what recruits should be doing on platforms like Instagram, on Twitter. So nowadays, everything feels pretty fragmented. There are a million different recruiting websites that you can go to get insights or, put your profile up so coaches can see you. We at D3 Direct think the free, simple option is usually the best one. So using things like Twitter and Instagram and YouTube to share your highlights, have all relevant information there for coaches to see is usually the best bet. And in this post that we released a couple of days ago, we're just talking about what coaches are actually going to be thinking about when they're looking at your social media, what would make them more likely to offer you, and maybe what would make them less likely to offer you in their posts, in what they're seeing in your posts. So this is showing you how to build a social media profile that helps your process rather than hurting it. So as a starter, let's look at the profile template. So we're beginning with Twitter. Again, totally free service. You want to begin with your full school name spelled out. So if you're abbreviating, coaches, and you're from Wisconsin, a coach from California isn't going to know what your school is in most situations, unless it's nationally recognized. And so, don't use something like CCS. Make sure to spell it out fully. List your primary positions. Sometimes we see recruits list, let's say they're basketball, right? They say, I'm a point guard, shooting guard, and combo guard. That doesn't actually tell a coach that much about what you do on the court. And when they watch your film and they see, okay, maybe they can't actually bring the ball up, so maybe they're not actually a point guard, or they're scoring really well, or they can bring it up, but they can't score. I think try to list it to your best position first. If you truly play two, let's say like a football player or a soccer player, and you truly play two, then you can say that. But just make sure you don't overpromise there. On grades, we always advise that recruits add their unweighted GPA. So sometimes people like to put their weighted GPA, which is, it looks really nice. You say, oh, I have a 5.1, but that doesn't actually tell coaches anything about your academic standing. It kind of says more about the strength of the classes you're taking, but it's very hard to judge objectively because every school is going to have a different scale. So we always say add your unweighted GPA, and then include your ACT and SAT score. Coaches, especially if you're going to do a pre-read, coaches are going to see that eventually. So you might as well include it. If you hear back that it's good enough, then you don't have to take the test again. But it gives you a chance to get that feedback. And a coach might say, hey, this is not quite what we want to see. And then that gives you as much time as possible to go about retaking those tests. So definitely include your current unweighted GPA. And I'm just going to pause before we continue here. I've seen some more people coming in. If you have questions, make sure to add them in the chat. I'll send a message right now so it pops up for people. And that is what we're here for tonight, for you to drop your questions in, and we will get those answered. In the meantime, we're kind of going through a couple different relevant topics right now for recruits. So we just talked about commitment timelines for 26 and 27 classes, how those can vary differently between schools that have one-off admissions, single moment admissions, or rolling admissions. Then we moved on to QuestBridge, which is a scholarship that has 32 D3 partners that's opening up soon, that requires your counselor to sign off. So that was another one we covered. Right now we're talking about social media presence for recruits and things that they can do. Okay, great. We have our first question here from Erica. So Erica says, I'm mostly receiving interest from D3 schools for basketball. Is it common for D3 athletes to transfer up to D2 or D1? Or would it make more sense to take a prep year? Not saying D3 is a bad option. So good question, Erica. I think this is, especially in the current moment with transfer portal being so big, it is definitely something that we hear a lot from recruits, is kind of trying to decide what their level is. I would say, it's going to depend on each situation. For an athlete that, if they aspire to be D1 or D2 and they don't have any offers at this moment, by July, I would say maybe time to start taking those D3 offers seriously. You can always go to the school, start your academics, work towards your degree, and maybe you end up loving that, and you just become a contributor early on, and that's a great fit. Or there are numerous D3 athletes that do transfer. I'm thinking of a couple in recent memory. Aaron Nkrumah, who just went through the whole NBA draft process, started out at the Division III level, and he transferred to D1 as a grad transfer. Brody Fox was another one he played in the WIAC, and then he went to Citadel in South Carolina on the men's side. And then on the women's side, I'd have to look up the name. Here we go. Let's see. Iowa transfer, Knox College. So let's see. Bria Medina, if we look her up, she just transferred from Knox College in the Midwest to Iowa. So huge transfer. That's where Caitlin Clark played. They made it to the national title game, and she's 5'6", so maybe a little smaller for a D1 guard, but she shot really well from three, 47% of the field, and pretty impressive to transfer up there. But again, very possible. Just something that we as recruits not to go into college thinking about the D3 level as maybe minor leagues, and you really want to commit to a school thinking that you want to go there because that's going to result in the best possible outcomes. But very possible. On our Twitter, we've covered a ton of D3 to D1 and D2 transfers. So happy to share more information on specifics. Just would say at the current moment, if you don't really have strong D1 or D2 interests, I would start being honest with those D3 coaches and say, hey, ask when that offer is, you need to commit by to ensure that you don't miss out entirely on the opportunity to play in college. So, Erica, thank you for that question. Okay, we have another question here from Michelle. So Michelle says, what advice can you offer for a late bloomer looking to play D3? Is the timeline the same for colleges that have developmental or JV teams? Class of 2028 GPA is 4.36. So good grades are always welcome to D3 level. So that is good to see. Class of 2028 still has some time. At the start of this call, we talked through a little bit of like the 2027s are filling up for high academic. But there are some D3 schools with rolling admissions that are filling 2026 spots as well at the moment. So I think you still have some time if you're 2028. If you're saying late bloomer, I'm guessing you're on the shorter side. But Michelle, if you could clarify the sport, that might be helpful too. I think coaches want to see, if you're a little smaller, if you have some game, they want to see that you're getting in the weight room. They want to see that you are kind of trending in the right direction. And then I think another big thing too is just get in person, like as much as you can. If there are schools that your recruit is interested in from a purely academic perspective, get on campus, go on a tour, meet the admissions department, do everything you can to kind of apply as a student, and then go to the elite camp. Make sure the coach knows who you are. And there's also the possibility that, and we've seen this before, there's a great story in NYU right now, this athlete named Brian Masako, who started out at F&M, Franklin and Marshall in Pennsylvania. He got cut, and he kind of had this loose offer to be on the team, but he got cut right when he got there. They offered him to be the manager. He did that for a little bit. He didn't really like it. And he decided, okay, I'm going to go to NYU. I'm going to just try to go to NYU. It's been my dream school. I didn't do it because I decided to take this basketball opportunity. But now that I'm a manager, I might as well just try. And I'll reach out to the basketball coach. I'll let them know that I'm going to be a manager. And he ends up getting in, becomes a manager for NYU, works really hard as a practice player, becomes pretty beloved on the team, earns a jersey, so plays in the national championship game 2 years later for NYU. And then now he's the team captain coming back for his senior year and is working out with NBA players this summer, looks really good, and will probably make a huge impact. So, Brian might have said he's a little bit of a late bloomer. Michelle's saying 6 feet, 165. I would say Brian was kind of in that range, maybe a little bigger. But all that to say, focus on academics. Make sure you get into the school, and you can always stay involved with the program that you want to be involved with, whether it's soccer, tennis, swimming, football, whatever. Stay involved with the program. The hardest part usually for Division III athletics is just getting into the school. So get that done first. Give yourself the option as a student. And then, if everything else falls through, at least you have that you can get into the school. You can start proving your value to the coach like Brian did as a manager. And then maybe that gives you time to develop. You get on a college weightlifting plan and you go from 165 to 185. Maybe you grow a couple more inches, and it gives you the benefit of time. But in the meantime, kind of like we were talking about in answering Erica's question, it gives you the chance to at least start your education, start working towards a degree, build a community, and you're not just sitting on the sidelines or maybe going to some big state school that you aren't really interested in, but a lot of your friends are going to, or some fallback. Really think about and prioritize the academic piece of it. And then if you're, trying to develop into a D1 or D2 player, or you're just trying to develop into a college player, generally, you have some time and a better place to do that. So thank you, Michelle. Thank you, Erica, for questions. If anyone else has questions, the goal of this tonight is really to get those answered and to help you sort through your issues. I would also say, Erica and Michelle, if you guys have follow-ups or something that didn't quite make sense, feel free to ask a clarification there, and we will address that as soon as you do. If you're a new subscriber, I've seen a few more of those come in. If you're a new sub, then it'll take about 5 minutes for you to be able to ask questions. That's just how the settings work. And yeah, feel free to get those questions asked. So in the meantime, I'm going to keep going back through our social media guide here. Again, this was a post we did a couple days ago. Actually relevant here. Just real quick for Michelle, you mentioned that your son's GPA or child's GPA was a 4.36. I think I was just talking about this maybe right before you asked your question, but when sharing GPA, we always advise saying out of 4. If you want to follow up with a weighted setup, that can be helpful too, maybe to show rigor or show how your individual school does it. But when you're showing GPA, make sure to do unweighted there. Okay, Erica, question here. Any opinions on taking a prep or post-grad year to widen your college options athletically? I think this can be a good one. I played at Swarthmore College in Pennsylvania and had some teammates that had played at prep schools, and know a lot of people who have used a prep year to really expand their recruiting process. I think just know what you're going for. If you truly have no options at the moment and it's something you really want to do, it's something your family can financially afford, because sometimes it can be expensive. That can be one route. The other route too is if you kind of want to go to a better school than what you're getting recruited by, maybe academically, you go to a prep school, really focus on getting your grades better, and then you get in there. I think just try to being honest with yourself about what you already have at the moment, because a lot of prep schools, especially the really good ones, let's think like Brewster and others in the Northeast, Northfield, Mount Herman, which are, I'm thinking from a basketball perspective, are very talented. They're going to have a lot of high-level Division I talent. So you're going to be practicing and getting better if you're kind of a borderline D3 recruit. you're not going to be playing a lot in the games. So I think just as you go through that process, make sure to talk to the coaching staff and get an honest evaluation of what your role is going to look like on that team before you commit to a full year of, we'll say college equivalent cost. If it's not, if money is not a factor, cost is not a factor to your family, then I think you can maybe go in and just say, hey, we'll try it and let our son develop or our daughter develop. And that can be a useful way to spend time. But I think, yeah, just be try to be honest and get transparency back from coaches about what they envision your child's role will be on the team, and check out who was playing on their roster last year to see if they'll actually be getting playing time. I know there are certain sports. I know, Erica, you're asking about basketball, so but I'll just mention that there are other sports where, like, for example, hockey. I've talked to a women's hockey former college player and a current men's recruit recently. And I think in hockey, depending on where you live, it can be vital just to get in the prep school world, because that's where colleges are looking and that's where the best teams and developmental opportunities are. Basketball, definitely, NEPSAC is a great prep league. And I know that D3s recruit pretty heavily out of there. But again, really try to have honest conversations with those coaching staffs ahead of time so that you're not just going in and paying for what you think is going to be a valuable experience, but is actually not super helpful. On that note, I will just say there is a guy who runs a business. His name's Corey Heights. He played at Air Force Academy basketball, and he runs an organization called Prep Athletics, which from everything I've heard, they do a really good job of helping families just to evaluate the pros and the cons of taking a prep year. He has been to, I think, every prep school in at least the Northeast. And he just does a really good job of being thorough with athletes and their families about what that opportunity entails. So maybe I'll type his name in the chat here. Corey Heights, Prep Athletics. You can check that out. He's going to be a little more knowledgeable than we are about the prep level. But thank you, Erica. Good question. Okay. Michelle, any follow-ups on yours? All right. Then we will move back into this social media review. Again, we're talking about free platforms here. In our experience, you don't need to pay for a service. Let's see. No, thank you. Okay, great, Michelle. Thank you. In our experience, you do not need to pay for a platform to get your highlights out to recruits. It's not going to be that helpful. We just went on a tour of the 5 D3 schools in Oregon. And one thing we asked every single coach we talked to 30 coaches and ADs combined throughout the weekend. And every single one of them pretty much said when they see a recruiting service email blast come through, they just delete it, because most times they're not going to be specific to that school. They don't understand their needs. And so you're much better off taking a personalized, individualized approach, which we think YouTube, Instagram, social media like Twitter can provide. So we're talking about how to set up the profile to do that. And the key here is just clarity. So this is an example of like a Twitter bio, how you want to set it up. So a couple things. One, a clear photo of you. When you go to a camp, if a coach has seen your profile, you want them to easily be able to identify you. And having a clear profile picture can help with that. Your real legal name. Again, when you appear in a questionnaire or in a camp list or something. You want coaches to recognize your name and not have to question whether or not, did you use your middle name or did you use a nickname, if it's actually you. This is a big one, messaging enabled. Twitter, I think the default feature on Twitter and Instagram is that non-followers cannot message you. So having messaging opened up is important. Sometimes people put their phone numbers on. I think personally that's a step a little too far, just because the messaging features already exist, and maybe having your phone number out to the whole world is not a great idea. But yeah, again, then professional handle. So maybe your name, class year, that's simple. Highlight link right there at the top. So this was a Huddle example. Current location, so where you go to high school. And then another big one right here is just follow teams and coaches. So this seems small, and you're probably wondering, okay, what does it actually do to be following a coach? Do they care? Are they even going to notice? But what it does is it gives you some insight into what's going on in the program, what they value, things they're talking about from their account. And the way that can help is down the road when let's say you're meeting with a coach, you're having a phone call, you're on a visit, something. If you're able to reference specific things that they've done, let's say you're following the account and you saw that during the year they had a big upset win over a conference opponent, or they're shouting out some players who got internships over the summer, and you can remember specifics about any of that. Those are the types of things that coaches remember. And, don't be disingenuous about it. Don't just bring it up to have a conversation point. But, if it's something that you're like, hey, I really want to work at this company. I saw you guys had a player that got an internship there. That's amazing. Do you have a connection with that company? Is that something that other alumni have done? Let's talk about alumni outcomes, that type of thing. And then that gets coaches' attention. That shows you, one of the big buzzwords in the industry is demonstrated interest, that you are seriously considering the school, and it's not just part of a list or one of many that you're thinking about. It's an actual contender in terms of where you're going to go to school. So let's keep going down the list here. Overall general advice with social media: really try to limit your time scrolling. If you're doing lifts, if you're doing workouts this summer, if you're practicing, just get to where you are, get to where you need to go, and then put your phone down, and you'll be way more efficient with, your workouts. And just think about these things as a dedicated recruiting tool, not profiles that you're going to be constantly checking and, necessarily worrying about the likes and interactions. Okay, finally, just a quick word here. This is convenient to say, we work with highly driven recruits who want to play in college and get the best education possible. So this covers everything from, the recruiting process, outreach to coaches, thinking about strategy around what schools are actually right for you and your interests and what you're looking for out of the college experience. We also assist with admissions prep and, thinking about, do I want to go early decision? Do I want to go regular? And then last but not least, a very important consideration to a lot of families is financial aid. So we do some financial aid review, negotiation of aid packages. And we've gotten some really strong outcomes. The Tufts example, we got about 80% off that tuition for that family. And then Lake Forest recently, they had gotten about 75% off. And then, using some negotiation tactics that we worked on with them, they were able to get an additional, I think it was $9,000 last week. So pretty big there. But again, some recent outcomes: Pomona, Tufts, Lake Forest, Hampton City, and others in progress, in flight. We're working with a lot of 2027 recruits at the moment. So just something that we offer. But back to the social media strategy here. Actually, before we get into that, because the questions were so good, just another plug on the right here. I'm just going to do it again. Ask your questions here. As a reminder, the goal of tonight and the whole reason we're doing this is for you to get your questions answered. Michelle and Erica already had some great ones in there. Make sure just to drop them in the chat. And if you're a newer subscriber, if you just joined, you have to wait 5 minutes. That's just the rules they set it up with here for you to clear, and then you'll be able to ask. So don't get discouraged if you can't do it right away. But we are going to keep moving forward here and talk about social media. So what you should be posting when it comes to posting on social, regular updates that show your progress are great. So longer game clips, but also maybe workouts, lifts, things you're doing, anything that shows you're focused and you're striving to get better. So here's some other suggestions on things that you should post: highlights, practice clips, awards, honors, any academic achievements, camp or showcase recaps if you're following D3 programs, maybe a campus tour or any kind of thoughtful engagement with the program's content. Things to skip: any kind of personal stuff with friends, party photos, complaining about coaches or teammates, trash talking opponents, reposting controversial content, or anything you'd hide for your principal. We call it the grandma rule. So whenever posting, just if it's something that you wouldn't want your grandmother to see, you probably shouldn't be sharing it on the internet. And that usually is helpful. So, okay, great. Peter, thanks for the question. So you asked, can we talk about pre-read timing? At what point does it become unlikely that a school will ask you to do a pre-read? At the top of the show, we talked about the variety of, pause 1 second here. The variety of just timing at the Division III level. So D3, some schools are still on rolling admissions and they're letting in 2026 recruits. Others are, more strict and are, to Peter's question, are doing pre-reads right now. And I think timing wise, I wouldn't get discouraged yet. Most times pre-reads run through August and September. And we were talking with a coach at Case Western University in Ohio recently, and they were saying that the pre-read just process was a little delayed this summer, and some people had been out on leave, and so they'd only gotten a couple done. So I think in that situation, delays can be, there is an explanation there, and I wouldn't get too discouraged. But I think the goal too, from a recruit's perspective, is just ask. Just reach out to a coach, say, Coach, here's my transcript, here's my test scores. What other information would you need to do a pre-read? I'd love to do one. I'm really serious about coming to your school. And I think judging their response is the best way to determine whether or not that interest is actually there or not. I wouldn't necessarily go by a specific timeline. Stay open to it throughout, August and maybe early September. Most D3s will do early decision in November. And so, by that time it's done, but we've seen pre-reads even into October. So just something to be mindful there, but good question, Peter. Feel free to ask a follow-up chat if you have one. I'm going to take a 2-minute break here. Stay on, ask your questions. Just need to grab oops. Oh, good job, Peter. Let's see. Thanks for bearing with us. Take a 2-minute break. Okay. I will just share this and be right back.